Hey everybody, I'm here with Paul Rietzel, who just won his first round match. Congratulations, Paul. Nice
Thank you
work.
very much. My first big vintage match. I got it out of the way. I hope I didn't embarrass myself too badly.
Yeah, so we know, Paul Rietzel, Hall of Famer, Paul Rietzel, Pro Tour champion, but are you new to vintage?
Yeah, completely. I think I played like one daily event on Magic Online with Dredge, and I didn't win. So this was it.
So you
I
decided to switch decks.
I switched decks. Yeah, I put rest in peace into this deck. So yeah, no, I figured White Weenie might be good. I don't know, since a lot of people try these crazy blue decks, and Dahlia is usually pretty good against blue decks. So, but it was fun. I had a blast. I'm not sure what happened game one, but when he had like 60 something mana, I think that's when I lost. So, you know,
Yeah, what he killed you with Una, Queen of the Fae.
uh huh,
I think
interesting.
he named White too. So
I
got
don't
some
know what
fairies
that
out of the
does. I
deal.
don't know what the dragon does, but I am familiar with necromancy from Cube, so I knew at least some portion of what he was trying to do to me.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see your deck. I think you've definitely positioned yourself as the hero of this tournament in a field of time walks and ancestral recalls. People like to see White Weenie.
Yeah, well, White Weenie is great. The thing with White Weenie is it's good when it can be interactive. When some of the creatures that you would play naturally are disruptive, and the Hate Bears archetype, which we've seen in Legacy, Modern, and I guess potentially is playable in Vintage, gets to play all of the best cards of that nature from all time. So I doubt anyone else brought a similar deck to the tournament.
Yeah, I think you're right, probably right about that. I had a bit of a roller coaster watching your match because game one, you didn't do that well. Sorry to break it to you, but I was kind of like afraid that that might be the story of your tournament. People just comboing when you have no disruption or no force of will, I should say. But then game two and three, you had pretty quick draws with the mocks into disruptive creatures, and I started to go like, oh god, like I don't want to play against turn one Thalia with my storm deck. I have Hercule's recall, I have rebuild, but I have no way to really beat a disruptive creature.
Yeah, and I was looking online. I did a little bit of research, a little bit of scouting and planning for this tournament, and a lot of these Hate Bears decks are like they're kind of skimping on their fast mana. Relying on Wasteland and Strip Mine and Mental Misstep to get them to turn two. But I wanted to play as many Black Lotus, Lotus Petal, Moxen, all of that garbage to try to make sure that I start my game on turn one, because that's really the only way that you can fight these crazy blue decks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It was actually interesting. In game three, Nick was on the play and he had Imperial Seal and Duress. And I can't fault him for playing Imperial Seal. Like Duress, is not that great against your deck, but just from seeing both hands at the same time, it would have been a much different game if he had maybe played turn one Duress and taken your Mox, been able to cast a 2-drop spell on turn two.
Yeah, would have been interesting. I mean, the reason why I was able to keep the hand knowing he had duress is because I had the cage to stop him from maybe killing me quickly, even if he took my Mox. But that would have been interesting to see what happened. So, um,
So
I
we're going to watch Shuhei Nakamura versus David Williams. I think we're ready for the match. So let's head down.
so
Okay, so let's find out what these guys are playing. Looks like two relatively fair blue decks.
Yeah, and I'm actually familiar with all 14 cards that we can see on screen, so that's we're off to a great start. Shuhei, playing an Oath of Druids deck. Obviously, I've seen some of the vintage lists, and some of them are trying to oath up crazy stuff like Grizzlebrand. Others more fair, and they're looking to try to get like a Dragonlord Ojutai into play. But of course, you have access to every non-anti creature in Magic history. And Dave,
Well, let's not jump to conclusions. Shuhei could be going for anything, be flipping some Vryn Wingmares into play or something like that. Well,
yeah,
we won't know until we see. But it does look like he's got the Dream Oath of Druids draw here with turn one Oath off of Mox and Forbidden Orchard if he wants to play it.
and Dave is Dave going to force of will this Oath of Druids?
Well, it looks like Shuhei made a smart play here in not playing Forbidden Orchard. It's going to kind of give Dave that decision that Oath of Druids doesn't really do much until Shuhei finds Forbidden Orchard. Um, I imagine he'll probably Force of Will it anyway. I mean, it's kind of when somebody casts Oath of Druids, it means they built their whole deck around it, and clearly it's a big part of their game plan.
No, I was questioning whether or not Shuhei should lead with the Flooded Strand in my brain for a second, since you could just play the Oath off the Moxen, maybe get it through. But he actually has backup here for his Oath of Druids in the form of Flusterstorm, so he really has the whole kit and caboodle here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just a really, really good draw.
I'm expecting an angry text from Dave in about 34 minutes from Shuhei, or maybe a Facebook message. And what can Dave do here? Even I mean, assuming he forces the oath and it gets through, you know, what's he just has to hope that Shuhei was unambitious with his oath hits.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, this is the thing about these standstill decks is it's not quite as explosive or not as strong as of a proactive game plan. So Dave, he's definitely looking several turns into the future here. He's got to neutralize what Shuhei can do, and then focus on himself later. But I would say, yeah, step one is just making sure you don't die to the turn one Oath of Druids.
And do these oath decks, and I know obviously they're not monolithic, they come in many different flavors, but do they traditionally play two or three creatures like oath decks of maybe extended a couple of years ago, or are they frequently just playing a one creature that they're designed to hit?
I think you usually see two. Some people go for cards like Gaia's Blessing to reshuffle. Other people just have a couple creatures and don't, they figure even if my Grizzlebrand's my sixth from the bottom card, it's probably still good enough to win. I don't know. We'll see exactly what Shuhei comes up with if he's able to activate the Oath.
Do these mentor decks? I mean, are they going to have ways to interact with a turn one Oath of Druids, or are they really going to have to kind of just slog through it?
I would be very surprised to see a main deck way to destroy an enchantment. If Dave is playing red, it's not out of the question that he could have a wear and tear, but I think it's going to be a problem for him to get this Oath of Druids off the table. Could maybe have something like a Chain of Vapor, but even that's just a temporary solution.
Mm-hmm. So Dave elects to strip the Tundra, not knowing, of course, that Shuhei has the absolute perfect draw with the Forbidden Orchard, and he even found a Force of Will.
Yeah.
Back it up.
And ironically, Dave had what would have been probably one of his best draw steps in Black Lotus to play a turn one Mentor, but you don't want to play a Mentor in the face of Oath of Druids.
Mm-hmm. This is one of those situations where you really need to have Leon and Relic Warder.
It would be perfect.
This mess. Or just a run of plows to keep plowing your own creature after he uses the Forbidden Orchard. Dave seems like he's decided to charge full steam ahead now with Mentor. Of course, no choice now that the Orchard has precluded the possibility of not triggering Oath of Druids.
Yeah, I mean, Monastery Mentor is a pretty good card. It might be able to fight through, depending on, hypothetically, it might be able to fight through. It would take some good draw steps from Dave and Shuhei not really doing that much. I don't think it's going to pan out in this game, but aha! So it's not a Grizzlebrand, it's not a Dragonlord Dramoka, it's a combo piece. Is this a combo you're familiar with, Paul?
I'm familiar with a version of it. I assume in Vintage she's just dead immediately, because that's always what happens in these situations. But
so with a Black Lotus or a Lion's Eye Diamond, you can generate infinite mana with the Auriok Salvagers. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure exactly what the win condition would be. Certainly something like a Pyrite Spellbomb would do. I'm sure there's...
that. It's probably Una. That's my experience so far.
All right, so
with
I
what I
can't see if there
would
was
say.
anything extra in the graveyard there that led Dave to concede. I'm sure there must have been. Or maybe, I mean, it could have just been the writing was on the wall.
Unlike me, Dave is someone who knows when he's beaten, so he probably took pity on the viewers, which I will never do.
All right, so let's see what they've got in the sideboard.
Energy fluxes. Mm.
Now I like Shuhei's sideboard. This is a sideboard I can understand. He's got cards that kill enchantments, cards that kill artifacts, cards that exile from the graveyard. You kind of know why everything's there. Um, Dave looks like he's got a little more just, fine tuning type cards, Supreme Verdict, I guess, for creature decks, but not sure what his approach will be to this matchup.
Explain to me the theory with cards like Energy Flux and Dak Faden. Uh, Obviously, almost everyone has Moxen and Lotuses, but are those cards that you're going to bring in normally, or wait to see if they have some a more higher commitment to the artifacts?
Yeah, I would say those cards are probably there foremost for the Mishra's Workshop decks. Dave has his own artifacts, so Energy Flux is only going to be really powerful if the opponent has like several more artifacts than you do, and I don't think that's something he can really plan on in a matchup like this. We see he brought in Arcane Laboratory though. Good way to not immediately die to the Bomberman combo, the Oriok Salvagers.
Okay. These are good tips here because I have similar cards like Kataki, Stony Silence, and Aethersworn Candidates. So I'll have to follow Dave's lead if I ever run into Shuey Knox later in this series.
Yep.
It's something that Magic players could learn. It's we're not just watching this for entertainment, and one of the best ways to learn is to imitate people that have a lot more experience than you. And certainly, I'm willing to admit that people have a lot more experience than I do in this format, but I can pattern match, right? I can recognize that either Sworn Canonist is just a walking arcane laboratory and understand how the card functions. So I'll imitate my good friend David.
Yeah. So I've got a soft spot for Oath of Druids in general because we played a bit of Oath of Druids when I was a really little kid, just getting into Magic. I remember there was one occasion where we were going on family vacation. I was about 7 or 8, and my older brother was 12 or 13. So we each brought one Magic deck to go on this family vacation. I had my White Weenie deck, of course. My brother had Oath of Druids. This was the height of Oath of Druids being great. It had Morphling and Spike Weaver and Gaia's Blessing, so you could just reshuffle his graveyard and fog every turn for the entire game. So anyway, we played 10, 15 games. I think I got my brother down to like 17 in one of the games, but he just clean beat me 15-0. And we're like, oh, I guess we can't play Magic anymore for, for the rest of this vacation. Matchup was just so lopsided. Oath of Druids, probably one of the least fun cards to play against.
Right. Doesn't encourage healthy play patterns, that's for sure. So Dave has a nice draw here.
Yeah, this should certainly be a more competitive game. We're going to get to see what Dave's deck is intended to do, which is to put a standstill into play with a creature land Mishra's Factory and kind of put the question to the opponent of whether you're going to sit there taking damage or crack the standstill and give me 3 cards.
And of course, Shuhei is feeling kind of the bane of every Oath player's existence, which is drawing one of the creatures that he intends to Oath up. So,
yeah, I wonder if he has backups, or just 2 copies of Salvagers.
Potentially, or relies on things like Brainstorm or Jace the Mind Sculptor to kind of put it back in.
I wish I had taken a closer look during sideboarding. I wouldn't be surprised if Shuhei had an alternative win condition, maybe a creature that can win without using the graveyard. Seems like something that would be valuable.
Speaking of play patterns and encouraging good behavior, Standstill. Another card, another 2-mana enchantment.
Yeah, my opponent in round 1 played Mystic Remora on turn 1. I don't know if you watched the match or are familiar with this card, but That's one it's like Standstill, but a little more interesting. It's got the one extra element of cumulative upkeep. So, you know, in reality, you're usually dead when it comes down, but at least you like kind of think maybe you can do something. Maybe you can have a plan. Maybe they'll miss a land drop and you can fight through it. But
Now there are three theories to standstill that I'm aware of, and when you're fighting against it and playing against standstill, the first one is to just crack it immediately, take your medicine, and just let them ancestral. Obviously, in vintage, that's a pretty hefty price to pay. The second is to wait it out. Just wait until just keep playing lands. Wait until maybe two extra cards is not going to be that big of a deal. Although of course, when the other person has a Mishra's Factory, that plan becomes more difficult. And the third and final one is to try to crack it on their end step when they have 7 cards, thus forcing
make them
them
discard.
to waste a few of the cards. Interesting to see which of the choices Shuhei goes with here, or comes up with a brand new plan that maybe I've never even seen before. Of course, in Vintage, you have access to things like Stifle as well, which I don't know if Shu has access to that particular card, but it's a way to crack the standstill and then fight it.
Yeah, that Stifle in particular actually does not work because Standstill says it says sacrifice it if you do draw 3 cards. So you'll stifle the Standstill, but that'll just trigger the Standstill again.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So is there a way to counter that effect?
Yeah, Spirit of the Labyrinth.
So we see Dave just chipping away with the Mishra's Factory.
Yeah, and I think Shuhei is content to pay some life, so to speak, in exchange for buying time. His hand was kind of poor for a while, as you mentioned. He drew his creature, which is not part of his plan A, and he just I think is going to wait as long as possible and try to be well prepared for the inevitable battle when he does crack the standstill.
And this might be a situation here because Dave is already going to have to discard his own end step. So maybe this is a time where Shuhei may want to crack it and give him multiple kind of useless cards.
Yeah, great point. Definitely has changed the game, the fact that Dave is missing land drops here. So Shuhei is not going to have as many cards in hand as Dave, but he's going to have access to more mana. And especially if he can do something like you mentioned, play a relevant spell at the end of the turn, maybe fight a little counter battle over it, and then untap and play some more threats.
Shuhei doesn't agree with us.
He's just being patient.
That's not an American trait, so I wouldn't be able to. So.
Yeah, in fact, Dave's probably just going to get bored and crack the standstill himself. Here we go. Now something's happening.
Certainly, this is going to get misstepped, right?
Well, Dave should. Yeah, I think misstep sounds like a good plan. He should manage carefully the number of blue cards in his hand because he's probably going to want to be able to hard cast one or both of those counter spells and still have enough fodder for Force of Will.
Sure.
But yeah, I think Shuhei, having the game having gone so long and Shuhei having uncracked fetch lands, the Brainstorm's going to do a really nice approximation of Ancestral Recall if it resolves.
The temptation, obviously, when you look at a game like this and you're on David's side, is to obviously be fighting a counter war when you're going to be discarding anyway. But in reality, the mana and preventing Shuhei from resolving a key spell, obviously, Oath of Druids in this case, is way more important than, this Brainstorm.
This is true, yeah.
It's also tempting to kind of shake your head and laugh at how stacked Dave's hand is, but obviously he's been missing land drops for a few turns, and he would have preferred to just have more blue mana in play.
Yeah, so he has access to a full 4 counter spells if he needs them. That said, if Shuhei is able to draw all of them out and force Dave to pitch the dig through time to a force of will, then suddenly the game's back to more or less even state.
Although, of course, at this point now, Shuhei's life total is becoming somewhat of a relevant factor. He's at 6, 2 fetch lands in play, facing a Mishra's Factory.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he did just find an answer to Mishra's Factory, which is kind of nice.
There's kind of a painful truth to Vintage that your deck is doing a good job of showing the world, but as powerful as these Vintage decks are, turn 1 and 2 wins and crazy combos and, you know, ancestral recalls and all this stuff, sometimes they're just not well equipped to handle a 2/2 creature. You know, like these Shuhei, I'd be surprised if he had any actual dedicated removal spells. He has this Pyrite Spellbomb, which is part of his combo, and is going to work out pretty well here, but I doubt he has Lightning Bolt or Swords to Plowshares, anything like that.
I like that. I think that's part of the thing that's fun about Vintage that keeps people coming back to it is that strategies that would be systemically and inherently weaker, like creature strategies, there's a natural counterbalancing force that you have to play all of these blue cards to fight the other blue cards, and it can leave them sometimes in a good position.
Right.
So Shuhei baited with Oath here and allowed it to get mana drained. He's trying to resolve Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, it makes a bit of sense. He does not have Forbidden Orchard, so it's not as direct of a win condition as it was last game.
Of course, he would have preferred to not have to allow the mana drain to be the thing that resolved there, but his back is against the wall, certainly. I assume Dave with Dig Through Time in his hand is going to go to war for this Jace.
Yeah, I think so.
If he didn't have some way to refill his hand, maybe he'd have to be a little careful about ripping through his counter magic, but here I think.
And he actually pitched the Dig Through Time, so he's just going for the throat here with Mishra's Factory plus Time Walk.
I don't understand how that's going to work through Pyrite Spellbomb, but...
Well, he can wasteland the untapped red source. He's got it all figured out.
That's why he's him, and I'm playing White Weenie.
Well, this is a pattern that you might be able to recognize and replicate later. Wastelanding their untapped mana and then attacking.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to put Mishra's Factory in the deck, though. So that's game, then. Assuming Dave goes for it.
And figures out the Wasteland move.
One of the things about Dave, and obviously he's a international superstar in poker and reality television, but even if he doesn't have as much time as maybe he always has to devote to Magic, I found that he doesn't miss much. He may take some time to get up to speed with new cards and new formats that come out, but he's a crafty veteran.
Yeah, I like watching Dave a lot. I had fun watching him play Storm in the last play-in tournament. He did a good job with that, and he's definitely got a wide range of strategies that he can play and do well with.
Shuhei seems confident in his sideboard plan. Dave was kind of, even in the last sideboarding, spending the last few moments sort of tweaking the last cards. Does he want another Flusterstorm, etc., etc.?
Flusterstorm seems pretty good to me in a matchup like this, although it's easy to say cards are good and harder to say which cards I would cut. But yeah, I mean, it's the way these games have gone, it seems like it's almost inevitable that there's going to be a big counter battle on a crucial turn, especially if Standstill can ever get into play. Mm-hmm. Flusterstorm's just great for fighting those counter battles.
Is there a lock available with Arcane Laboratory, or it's a softer lock, right, in Dave's deck? He would need to have some sort of a card draw going with Jace and then enough counter magic. There's no Forbidian style lock.
Good question. Not that I'm aware of.
Is it possible, a card like Arcane Laboratory, when you're not playing against a Storm style combo deck, gets a little bit weaker on the draw, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it might be part of a. Dave might be trying to think like, okay, what can I do if Oath of Druids actually gets into play?
Mm.
And being neither able to remove it from the table nor ever cast your Monastery Mentors, your win conditions, might not be an acceptable solution. So maybe he thinks like, all right, if I can play a Mentor, make some tokens, play an Arcane Lab, that might buy me the one turn I need in order to win the game. I don't know. Maybe it's just a kind of a backup plan B type
That's,
situation.
that's a great point. I'm sitting here also thinking in my brain about the Ether and Sworn Canada's text, of course, which wouldn't stop Infinite Mana from.
Yeah, that's funny.
Wow, another just amazing draw from Shuhei,
Yep.
only missing a.
Another turn one Oath, but no Forbidden Orchard this time.
Dave has a Containment Priest, so I don't see him going anywhere with this hand. Do you?
No, he's got all of his crazy disruptive cards that we were not sure if he was going to bring in off the sideboard, but he's definitely going to stop Shuhei from comboing off.
Yes. And Shuhei, of course, can't even combo off yet. He's still missing a way to give Dave a creature.
So it looks like this game might just come down to a pretty normal slug it out type vintage game where they're fighting over their card advantage spells and neither one can really score an easy win.
It might, but those two containment priests are going to they're going to chip away pretty quickly unless Shuhei fights over them, and if he does,
It's
he's
true.
going to find himself pretty low on resources.
Yeah, second containment priest made that plan possible. Maybe if a Mishra's Factory joins the fray, yeah, 2-2 beatdown might get the job done.
For once, Shuhei drew not such a good card. Although I guess when you have Force of Will, any blue card is a good card. This is when Shuhei needs to find a way to get humility into play after he plays his Containment Priest. Wait, but then he'd have to remove it from play again after Oath triggered. All right, it's a bad plan.
So I like that play of force pitching force. A lot of times in a game like this, you're happy to cast your first Force of Will just to fight over the most important spell, but in a game where you cast two Force of Wills and don't have a really powerful card draw spell to refuel, it almost just puts you too low on resources. So that's a play that I usually look for when I draw two copies of Force of Will, is just to pitch one to the other.
Any thought to upkeeping that Containment Priest there? Well, it gets in anyway on end step, but
To play around possible mana drain.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the card Counterspell, but Mana Drain sounds like that's way better. Dave has to love his position here.
Yep. So I think the card Shuhei is really looking for now is that one Pyrite Spellbomb. Take care of this priest, and then take it from there. But he's a few steps away from really getting anything going.
Although at this point, again, I'm not sure his exact deck list, but can he afford to sacrifice Pyrite Spellbomb? Does he have another way to win if he sacrifices Pyrite Spellbomb with Rest in Peace in play?
Well, one of the best ways to beat 2/2 creatures is 2/4 creatures. So he could maybe just win the old-fashioned way.
I truly hope this game devolves into Dave's 2/2/2 staring down a 2/4 for a long period of time.
So I've really enjoyed watching this match. I feel like we got to see both decks shine. In game one, the Oath deck just had its really great draw and got to combo off quickly.
Mm.
But then after sideboarding when Dave was able to shut down the Oath of Druids plan, we see the costs of putting the whole Oath package in your deck, which is that in a really close, um, blue mirror in Vintage, having this small number of cards that's not actually great at fighting a counter battle, it costs you. And I think you could make the argument that it's made the difference in these sideboard games.
Sure. Right, Dave is just less wasted energy. Right, it's just everything he's doing is towards the plan of killing Shuhei, fighting battles, or stopping Shuhei from doing what he's doing. And Shuhei
Exactly.
has this combo element, and he's basically in a position where he is just trying to prevent Dave from piling on. He is going to win this counter battle.
Yeah, which is certainly so. He's many, many steps away from winning this game, but whatever those steps are, step one is definitely just don't let the Jace stay in play, because in Vintage, especially, every turn that a Jace is in play is makes it astronomically less likely for you to be able to claw back in.
Is he considering paying mana for this mental mist? There's no way, right? No. Okay. One other thing I respect about Dave is that he plays very briskly when there's no difficult decision to make. He just moves through the steps. It's a pleasure for me to watch.
Yeah, and I wonder if Shuhei, thinking about pausing before the second mental misstep, I wonder if that was actually a little bit of gamesmanship. Like
Sure.
he doesn't want to make it obvious that he has another blue spell in his hand, so instead of just really quickly paying life for it, he maybe pauses for a second, thinks like, okay, what are the costs? Should I bluff, quote unquote bluff, like having a blue spell? Then he pays life for the mental misstep, makes it a little more believable.
Shuei would love to brainstorm into a fetch land into Ancestral here.
Yeah. The reverse order would do as well.
Sure.
But
He's got two cards that I can think about that he might want to put back in with Brainstorm. Ooh, oh no, rest in peace. Wow.
That's not quite Ancestral Recall. Most of the time it is the same, but not in this particular case.
Although if he does draw 5 more lands, and then Dave draws Dig, this is perfect. I love clean, honest magic here. Let the die or let the dead lie, you know? Oh man.
This should be like this is like a commercial for like all the cards on Dave's side of the table. Just every card doing exactly what you envision in your perfect case scenario for it to do. The Rest in Peace against the Delve spells, the Containment Priest against 3 Oath of Druids. Perfect.
I'm just really enjoying this 2-2 beatdown. That's really what keeps me coming back, 20 years later, is that untap, upkeep, draw a card, survey the board. They have no blockers. You've got that fresh creature ready to go, and you just send it right into the middle of the table, and provide them with 2 points of free entertainment.
Yeah. That's not what most people come to Vintage for, but I can appreciate it.
Reed, I don't know if you have been watching, but so far the last couple of matches have been just Containment Priest beatdown. Is that's not normal for Vintage?
Well, personally, I died from 18 life in one attack. um, I would have done a little bit better against a 2-2, but I do got to give it credit. I mean, a couple pieces of disruption and last man standing will get the job done. Whether it's 2-2 or a Monastery Mentor or a Blightsteel Colossus, doesn't really matter.
To be fair, at one point during your match, those creatures were 2/2s before prowess triggered 2 or 3
Hmm.
more times. So
So this is big. Now, Shuhei has found Jace the Mind Sculptor kind of at right in time at the last moment where it's going to be really really potent. Um, Dave is stuck with the dig through time that he cannot cast, and it's just a race against the clock if Shuhei can find something with this Jace before his life total gets to 0. It's the brainstorm that you were hoping for, basically, to get rid
yeah,
of these Oath of Druids.
it's a big time draw. The problem, oh no, this preordain isn't going to resolve. Wow. So you can resolve this preordain. So it's going to be very exciting to see what the 2 cards after the second druids are.
So I'm a little bit from playing Jace in Legacy a lot. I'm kind of an aficionado for this type of turn where you have to decide like which order to what mode to activate Jace. Do you want to do it before or after you preordain? How are you going to see the most cards? Or is there any possible card where you would draw where you might want to use the minus ability on Jace? You got to think about all these things. I know Shuhei is going to make the right decision. I can't wait to see what he does. He brainstorms first, so I guess his priority must be to shuffle away the 2 dead cards or scry away the two dead Oath of Druids. And he did find an answer to the Containment Priest in Engineered Explosives.
Hmm.
Um, Worth noting is that it will destroy Oath of Druids, so if he wants to plan for the super long term, he could think about keeping a redundant copy in his hand.
I have a question. If when he engineered explosives and kills the rest in peace, where will all of these permanents go?
Well, the Engineered Explosive itself definitely exiled, right? Because sacrifice is part of the
Sure.
cost. Um,
I think that they're
I
exiled
think they're all exiled, yeah.
because that's very relevant to a lot of the delve spells that are between hands and tops of libraries here.
Absolutely.
This is fun.
Yeah, this turned out to be well. I thought it was going to be kind of a boring game actually if the containment piece priest wound up going all the way, but now it's become very interesting. If Dave can have a good draw step and or ever resolve dig through time, it's going to be a tight one.
It's a pretty good draw step.
Yeah.
Hmm. Such delicate maneuvering here with Shuhei, being at 3 life and having the Phyrexian mana and being under Arcane Laboratory and
Yep.
I would need a lot more experience before trying this out.
So the top got mental misstepped, and it's possible Dave made a small error that turn in casting the top before attacking because if he had forced Shuhei to pop the explosives, the top would have gone to his graveyard.
Mm. And now Dave is obviously in rough shape here, facing an active Jace. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, we actually see the Fate Seal coming into play here, which I'm a little surprised about. I would have thought that Shuhei would brainstorm until he finds a counterspell, maybe, but I guess he's just like using the logic of Dave clearly has nothing since he's done nothing for so long. Let me try to go for the win as quickly as possible with Fate Seal.
Mm-hmm. Right, and he's in a position where if he does find counter magic and starts to go to work with Jace in between his card drawing, he could lock Dave under Arcane Laboratory.
Oh,
Soft,
that's yeah, that's
soft
a great
one.
point.
I hate that card. So that's
So, of all the ways that this game could have predicted, Shuhei winning the game with Jace Ultimate would have been pretty low on my list.
huh. Yeah. What about Dave firing off a hard cast dig through time and then finding the perfect things with that? Here's Shuhei playing right into Dave's plan, putting more lands on top of his deck.
Yeah.
And, as of right now, he can't stop a dig.
What if Dave was just holding Urza's Rage or something? Just gotta get to 11. Come on, one more.
Great.
So balance. I'm actually a little bit surprised to see that in Shuhei's deck after sideboarding. It's quite poor against the man lands in Dave's deck. Doesn't stop planeswalkers, but it could wind up being relevant in this game if I guess it's excellent against Monastery Mentor. So that makes a lot of sense now that I think more about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's one of his few ways to catch up. So here we're going to see Dave respond to anything with dig. Oh no, because it doesn't matter. Because he can't counter anyway. This is fun. I take it back about Arcane Laboratory. I'm back in an Arcane. Shields are kind of down here.
So what's he looking for? Monastery Mentor is not that exciting under Arcane Laboratory. You could find a Jace of his own. Not sure if he has any way to directly remove Jace from the other side of the table. Something like a Mishra's Factory. Can Shuhei beat Mishra's Factory?
I don't know. That's a good question. Still got that Pyrite Spell Bomb.
That must have been a really bad dig through time to take Stony Silence.
Although Stony Silence does adversely affect Shuhei a lot more than it does Dave at this stage of the game.
Certainly that's true, but is it Shuhei's mana that Dave would really prefer to be fighting over here?
No. Although Arcane Laboratory does kind of obviate a lot of the different lines.
Yeah, that's true. He could have just been looking at, a fistful of lands and permission spells, and he's like, anything that does anything is better than these. And that could be, part of that could be informing Shuhei's decision to go for the Fate Seal right away. Is he's like, with Arcane Laboratory in play, such a high portion of Dave's library is an ineffective card. So I can leave lands on top. I can leave permission spells on top. Just have to put Mishra's Factory on the bottom.
Be fascinating to see a win probability chart of this particular game.
Yeah, it would have been a roller coaster.
Now my gut says that Shuhei is still advantaged in this position, just having Jace with so many.
Well, he's at 1 life, and his Mox Pearl is Stony Silence, so he cannot balance away the Containment Priest with what he has.
Oh wow!
Dave's done a nice job managing.
And Dave's gonna have the one card
that
left.
aspect of the mana.
This is crazy.
So Shuhei is going to have to probably brainstorm with Jace and hope to find something. He's cut off from 6 mana from that Stony Silence, and he's cut off from Engineered Explosives as well. I just eat my words when I said that was a bad dig through time. You found a perfect card that I hadn't even thought of.
A brilliant dig through time.
Brilliant dig through time. So yeah, I think all he can really do is start with a brainstorm. It's going to be very tough with the Arcane Lab. He can't cast Treasure Cruise into something. Um, Dave has Flusterstorm as backup. Wow, this what talk about a back and forth game. I thought it was in the books for Dave, and then I thought the Jace was going to run away with it on Shuhei's side, but
And
um,
wild that the Arcane Laboratory, which at one point seemed like it was constraining Dave, and the Stony Silence, which we thought indicated a weak dig through time, were cards that absolutely broke Shuhei's back in kind of the end stages of that game.
yeah, yeah, remarkable. I mean, a game like that where you get to see kind of like every detail of every card that's played become relevant. Just great. I loved it.
Awesome. Well, super enjoyed doing commentary there, watching two masters of the game. Certainly, people that know a lot more about vintage than I do. But thanks for kind of holding my hand and guiding me along through it.
No, you did a great job. I mean, you got the full vintage experience there. That was we saw everything in that match.
And it ended like all matches of Magic should, with a 2-2 for 2 rumbling across.
And killing an opponent despite a planeswalker on 11 counters and 7 cards in hand.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
All right, so I guess that's it for me and Paul. We're gonna throw it to a commercial, and be back with some more vintage Super League after that.